The Catholic Church in the U.S. welcomed thousands of new members this Easter, and dioceses across the country, both big and small, have reported record numbers of converts receiving their sacraments. To track this growth, our sister news service, the National Catholic Register, contacted all 175 Latin Rite territorial dioceses in the United States. 71, about 40%, responded. Out of those dioceses, 66 saw an increase of people entering the church from 2025 to 2026. Some saw their converts doubled. To help us understand this trend, we are joined by Matthew McDonald and Jonah McKeown. As writers for the National Catholic Register, they have each done extensive research into the rise of converts to the Catholic faith. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Matt, I want to start with you. Fantastic reporting for the National Catholic Register. Tell us, how did you go about collecting this data, and what are your big takeaways?
I contacted almost every diocese, and also in some cases found official sources like a diocese newspaper for the numbers. My takeaway is that the numbers are significant. And by that, I mean, they're nowhere near where they were before the clergy sex abuse crisis of 2002, but they're significantly higher than before the coronavirus pandemic. And in the last few years, they've been growing a lot.
And Matt, you wrote in the National Catholic Register that this year's increases aren't a one-off, but they follow significant increases in recent years. Can you say more on that as well?
Sure. So during the virus, as you might expect, when churches were closed and people were worried about their health, there was a big drop-off. So from 2019 on, for a few years, you saw a large decrease. But then since 2023, nationally and also in many dioceses, you've seen large increases, as you alluded to, in some cases, large double digits and even more than doubling in some cases.
Wow. Jonah, many of these dioceses mentioned an unprecedented number of young adults entering the church. What's drawing these Gen Zers into the faith in particular?
Yeah, I think there's several really important things. So in our reporting at the National Catholic Register, we've talked to a lot of students, young people on college campuses, and many of them have told us that there's actually kind of some very ripe, fertile soil around this demographic, because many of them have never been to church before. Many of them have never been baptized and haven't really been raised in the faith. And that's obviously kind of a symptom of our wider society, where in many ways, unfortunately, faith has been on the decline. But it actually creates this really interesting environment where young people are seeking something different, seeking the truth, and they're finding it in many places in the Catholic faith. And many of them are coming into the church through, campus ministries like Newman Centers and that kind of thing, but also through the influence of, social media influencers and these kind of online apostolates, of which, of course, EWTN is a big one.
Absolutely. Matt, in speaking with these dioceses, what reasons did they share with you for people who are seeking the Catholic faith?
The first thing everybody brings up is God, the Holy Spirit. And as a believing Christian, I accept that. But God often works through human beings and human activities. So what's going on? In some places, they're taking more care to train catechists, to try to make sure that they're teaching doctrine and prayer life better than they might otherwise be. In other places, they're increasing their outreach. I can think of one parish in Rhode Island, for instance, where years ago they used to get about 3 converts to the faith. And then they started a 4-week program of actually asking people to think of people who should be contacted, and the parish would pray for them. And eventually these people would be asked to join, and that number shot up to around 25. So there are actual actions that people are doing to try to attract people to come join the Catholic Church.
And that prayer makes a difference. And Matt, the vast amount of data you collected is not readily available anywhere. The New York Times conducted a similar inquiry to dioceses, but they only heard back from 24. Can you explain why data about converts is so hard to track?
Data lags everywhere. If you think of government data, it's often a couple years behind. The Catholic Church is decentralized. That might be surprising to people who don't follow the institutional church very closely. But national data depends on individual dioceses, and that's run by a bishop and his officials. They depend on individual parishes, who have sometimes better things to do than just collect numbers. So that if you want data that's fairly recent, you have to go and ask for it.
Jonah, headline after headline amid this news has suggested that this influx of young people indicates a larger religious revival. National data paints a different story, however. According to Pew Research, just 31% of Americans ages 18 to 30 attend a religious service at least monthly. Only 33% say religion is very important in their lives. Jonah, what do you make of that? Is there, in fact, a religious revival, or is it too soon to tell?
Right. You're absolutely right that the data doesn't necessarily show a huge reversal of the decline of Christianity, which, again, unfortunately, it does appear to be ongoing based on the data we've seen. So in many ways, it is a little bit too hard to say whether this, wave of new conversions will actually reverse Christianity's decline in America. But the signs are hopeful because, obviously, as these young adults are coming into the church, many of them are meeting their spouses and having children, and God willing, will baptize their children in the church. And so there's hope there, but it might take quite a few years for us to really see whether this is a true revival, as many people have suggested that it is.
And Jonah, you've hit on this already, but can you speak to how social media plays a role in drawing young people to the faith, especially right now?
Sure, it definitely plays a role. There are many of these kind of online evangelists who are very focused on kind of apologetics and speaking truth in this world where a lot of people need to hear the truth. There's also a lot of great online resources. Obviously, EWTN has a lot, but there's other ones like Hadro that are really trying to reach out to people in the online space. But I will mention that in our reporting, and I'm sure Matt has found this too, that it's more important in a way for people to get that personal invitation to check out Mass or to check out Christianity, because time and again, that's really what has drawn people in, not necessarily reading a social media post, but a personal invitation from someone they know and trust and love to come and check out what this great thing called Catholicism is all about.
Yeah, to have that personal encounter. Matt, do you think there's a Pope Leo effect at all with these numbers, that having the first ever U.S. Pope is stirring up more interest in the faith here?
There might be. A couple of diocesan officials suggest that to me. The idea of someone, a pope, the Bishop of Rome, speaking about the Catholic faith in an American accent, unfiltered by translation, that might be attractive to some people and make them take a second look. It's hard to get hard evidence about that.
Yeah. It's still early on. We'll have to wait and continue to watch that. Jonah, the 3-year National Eucharistic Revival wrapped up in the U.S. The next National Eucharistic Pilgrimage will be underway this summer. As a Catholic journalist who's been following that, any thoughts on whether there is a connection between the Eucharistic revival we've had here in the United States and now signs of a possible religious revival?
Right. Well, going back to what we were talking about the importance of us as Catholics sharing our faith with others and inviting people in, it does seem as though that has really had an effect. And the way by which that has come about is really a galvanization of us as Catholics through the National Eucharistic Revival. We had the huge Eucharistic Congress that many thousands of people attended. There were Eucharistic adoration and processions in the street. That's the kind of thing that really gets people excited about being Catholic. And, surveys have shown that in many people's parishes where they got to participate in these kinds of in-person events that really celebrated the faith, that really made people, it's kind of an intangible thing, but it made people more comfortable with sharing their faith and just kind of living their faith out loud, if you will. And so I do think we have seen, again, a real galvanization of some Catholics who maybe otherwise wouldn't be sharing their faith with others. And obviously, it's difficult to say whether that has accounted for many of the conversions that we've seen, but it certainly couldn't have hurt.
Yeah, with so many events, there's so much opportunity for invitation, like you mentioned. Okay, this question is for both of you. Macro data does not yet imply like we've been talking about, that the tide is turning on a religion in America, but it is hard to deny the anecdotal evidence and the diocesan data that we're seeing. How do you think then the Catholic Church in the U.S. can lean into this trend in this moment and draw in the people who are searching for God and better retain those who are already in the church? Matt, I'll start with you.
Retention is a problem. It's a long-standing problem that people who are involved in conversion programs are aware of. People reach this high on Easter Vigil when they become Catholics, and then not too long after, some of them are not going to church anymore. So you can't just give them the Mass schedule and say, good luck. You have to walk with them. And one of those things is try to get them involved in a parish, try to make sure that their confirmation sponsor stays in touch with that person, and try to make sure that they feel like they're part of a family.
That's great insight. Jonah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Matt was absolutely bang on. I mean, as Catholics, we hold dear the principle of subsidiarity, where things should be done as much as possible at the lowest level. And by lowest, I just mean closest to us as people. And that really is the parish. The parish should be a family. And obviously for many people, they might not feel very connected with their parish. And that's something you can change. You can get involved. You can pray more, you can go to church more, and you can attend more events. And that can only be a good thing, again, in terms of us projecting as Catholics that we love our faith, and those who are coming into the church newly, we want to keep you here. We don't want you to just come in and then forget about you.
Yeah. Fantastic reporting, both of you. Thank you for your work and sharing your insights with us, Matt and Jonah. Thank you.